Can any of you enlighten me on why is it that left-leaning people, especially on Twitter, seem to be struggling really hard with the concept of human rights? They're really trying to understand it, but like for some reason they can't grasp it. Freedom of association, for example, is something that they're struggling with. Free speech is another one. For instance, they believe that if you take a book away from the school system, that is a free speech violation. Like, I don't think that when the founding fathers wrote the American Constitution, that they believe that free speech means you have to read the book. Because that's what schools do, right? Like, you have to read it. If the teacher says you have to read this, you don't really have a choice. You have to read it because tomorrow you got a quiz. And you get graded. And if you get bad grades, you don't pass the class, right? So, like, it's not free speech where you're forced, where you're compelled to read something. But it seems that in the United States, whenever Democrats are talking about removing books from the school curriculum or from a school library, heaven forbid, the left freaks out. And when you look at the books that are being removed, most of the times they're not books that you would read in a civilized setting. Most of them are pornographic in nature. They even have like bizarre drawings, things that even I would be ashamed to talk about. I mean, even amongst other hentai game developers, I would be embarrassed to show one of these books. Because the pictures are horrendous and disgusting. It is an absolute insult on the art form. Let alone allow children to have it. Most of them seem to be from the K-level schools. So obviously parents are upset and they want these books removed, while left-leaning people are saying that this is the equivalent of book burning. Yes. Which is interesting because in an age where most of the information is not even stored on books, I mean, most people nowadays don't even have books in their house. Most of the information is stored digitally. And we have actively seen how corporations are purging their own clouds for documentaries or for certain things that they don't like. And there's a huge justification coming from left-leaning activists and politicians for social media to do better and to ban more people, to deplatform political pundits and activists on the right. So, in my opinion, that's where the censorship is at. Like, that's where the actual book burning is at. The spirit of book burning is when you decide to remove movies like Gone with the Wind because it's offensive. That type of shit is the legit censorship. Not the fact that, oh, well, some books that are borderline pornographic, they're being removed from American schools. That's it. Come on. But, okay, fine. If that's the standard, I noticed that Canada is doing a similar thing, except that they're not banning based on the pornographic depictions. They're banning it based on equity concerns. So what's astonishing here is that there is no huge outcry. I mean, there is an outcry, but not at the same level that you notice in the United States. Of course, you can say, well, different country, different problems, but the same people from Twitter that are concerned about our democracy and, if, for example, when Hungary does something similar, they're livid and outraged. I mean, they seems to have concerns without borders. For some reason in Canada, they're not as concerned. Okay, so after a public high school in the Canadian province of Ontario cut the number of books in its library in half, removing all books published before 2008 and saying it was due to an equity-based book weeding process. In other words, this is what the left would call book burning. The Ontario Education Minister called for the process to end. So it's interesting to see that even in the very democratic and very tolerant country of Canada, there is some common sense. They are open-minded, but not that open-minded. I mean, it seems that at book burning, they do pull the brakes. So the Peel District School Board rolled out a process that led to some schools in the area, there's not just one, by the way, to remove books from the shelves based on the publication date. Wasn't this like a thing that the Nazis wanted? They were calling it Year Zero. I think like they were trying to implement it after the war. Like to completely erase the history that came before. And it's like, all right, well, we'll call it this Year Zero so that people weren't educated on previous historic events. So that when something bad was being implemented, people wouldn't be able to say, well, yeah, but like that actually happened back then. So it's not a good idea if we try it now. I mean, this is the vibe, isn't it? Like this is the same value, the same principle, what they are trying to do, they wouldn't be able to do it. Again, for the same reason that most of the information now is in the digital space and most people don't even read books. But they're trying. Like, they wanna. It's like the Canadian education minister said, stop it. Stop. But again, like, these are teachers, right? Like, these are the enlightened minds of the people that are trying to educate children. And they're basically saying, yeah, we need to remove books before 2008. So the education minister had to step in and say, enough, no. Stop it. You're being naughty. Among the books removed was The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I love the fact that, like, this is the thing that upsets people the most. Like, if it wasn't for this, maybe many wouldn't have noticed. But thankfully, Anne Frank seems to have saved the day. The chair and trustee of the Peel District School Board told CBC that the process of book weeding was rolled out wrong. And the board plans to communicate with parents about the weeding process. Well, here's the thing. Like, why do you have to weed them, though? Why do you have to weed them? Like, do you not have space for the books in a library? Are there so many that you have to remove them? This is the actual conversation that should start. What's wrong with them? Are they decomposing? Like, is it because they're made out of paper and the passage of time is destroying the tome of knowledge? Why do you have to take them out? Why is there any book? Right? Because at least in the United States, I understand. It's like, okay, these books contain borderline pornographic content. They're too advanced for young children. So that's the justification. But what is the justification here? Oh, it's equity concerns. What happens if we don't address these equity concerns? That's my question. Like, what happens if these equity concerns remain unaddressed? Do we have to address every single equity concern? So in a recording viewed by CBC, a school board trustee, Carla Bailey, said during a committee meeting, when you talk to the librarian in the library, the books are being weeded by the date, no other criteria. Yeah, but again, like, why? And why 2008? Why not 1990? Why not 2010? Very bizarre, isn't it? That is where many of us... And by the way, to claim it, equity reasons, right? So, like, before 2008, in Canada, things weren't equitable. It's only after 2008 that things became equitable. There is no knowledge, there is no value in Canadian literature that took place before 2008, right? Like, everything is tainted before that particular year. Nothing of value. Nothing that you want to teach kids, which happened before 2008. Almost shiroi. So that is what many of us have real issue. None of us have an issue with removing books that are musty, torn, racist, or outdated. Well, that's the thing, right? I love how they're inserting certain things that are true and then inserting the lie. Then again, this is in Canada, so maybe all of it is true. But if you remove books that are musty or torn, yeah, sure. But the thing is, like, you don't really have to remove them. Like, you can reprint them. It's not that hard. Like, we have the technology. It's not even expensive, by the way. But racist or outdated, why? Like, shouldn't you know how the past was in order to appreciate the present? How can we appreciate, like, all the progress that is being done if it's being erased from history? Not to mention, what is the purpose of achieving progress now if in the future people will remove it? Like, imagine this, if you're an activist and you're struggling really hard in order to accomplish your activism. And in the future, people just remove you from all books. Like, they're like, no, we're weeding out the books where you took part because it's outdated according to our values. Weeding out the book, removing a book from a shelf based simply on this date is unacceptable. Yeah, so basically, like, the problem that they're having with is twofold. Number one, that Anne Frank book was removed. Which, okay, it's a problem, but if this wasn't the case, if Anne Frank book wasn't removed, would you be fine with it? Like, would this not have been a scandal? And the second issue that they seem to have a problem with is the removal based on the date, right? So if it wasn't be based on a date, and it's actually like a list of things that they consider racist or outdated, whatever the fuck that means, take into account that Baby It's Cold Outside is something they consider outdated. Meanwhile, Wet Ass Pussy is something that is very modern and contemporary. Read the lyrics of both and compare them to each other. Bring a bucket on a mop because this... But I suppose this is their point of contention, right? Like, that the book burning is fine, but it's not done properly. Like, we need to book burn it properly. This is what they're complaining. Okay, let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.